peloton, so it's a freewheel job now before they get swept up.
Well, he must have looked back, I think, over his shoulder and seen that the main field was slowly but surely charging down upon them, because the main field's last official time check was given as just 10 seconds behind the group of Konechny and Axel Merckx. So Axel using the better part of valor there, realizing the important thing about the Tour de France is not to insist in a breakaway like this if you're not building up an advantage over the main field. And there they are right now. His former teammates, some of them actually chasing him down, because Axel raced alongside Lance Armstrong for a couple of years when he raced for the Motorola team. And Hincapie at the front of the group there. This is Yaroslav Ekimov slightly moving off the front here, but realizing that everybody quite happy now to just, I think, have a moment of truce, Phil, before we come to the very difficult climb, which is going to blow this race to pieces. Probably turn the overall standings again upside down.
Looking at Ekimov there as he stretches his back. So they've caught Axel Merckx. This is the face of Thomas Konechny, riding his first Tour de France, Czech Republic rider. He's sticking to his guns. He was with Axel Merckx, but I think he should look over his shoulder, because they're right there behind him, about 10 seconds, I would say, as he now descends into the town of Tarascon. We've seen the leaders, or Tarascon rather, as we've seen the leaders go through there. The watches will be running. 4 minutes 19, the latest check. It might be enough, although we've seen the climb, and it is very, very hard indeed today. There'll be plenty of people to shout for Laurent Jalabert. There'll be plenty of people too to shout for Nozell, because the Spanish rider will have a lot of support on this climb.
In fact, it depends really on the way the other riders in the group decide to ride this final climb here, Phil, because the reason is that all of the attacks are expected to come from the Spanish riders. The man we're looking at there, Thomas Konechny, is caught in no man's land, the race situation, as we look at the Plateau de Bay in the distance where the riders are heading to. Is three leaders: Isidro Nozal of Team Once, Laurent Jalabert of France, who is now the new leader in the King of the Mountains competition, of Laurent Dufaux of Switzerland, and their advantage around about 4.5 minutes over the main field. I don't think Armstrong is too worried at all about chasing down Laurent Jalabert, and he has a mutual respect for the man who he regards as a great champion. So he will just allow his team to set a nice steady tempo on the front end of the main field, and it's whether or not the other riders like Botero, like Roberto Heras and some of the other Spanish climbers decide to go onto the attack as to whether or not the three leaders will survive the day.
I think Armstrong will take his troops onto the mountain and just tell them to hold their speed if they can, for as long as they can, and then he'll check over his shoulder and see just how many have managed to match the pace, and then he'll decide what to do. And if it means they pick up the three leaders, that is what will happen. And if it doesn't, he won't worry either, because he will keep his lead in the Tour de France, and that he will certainly take then to the Battle of Mont Ventoux on Sunday, the Giant of Provence, which I know many riders in this race really do fear. But we're looking at the US Postal Boys now, steaming into this very nice little town of Tarascon, as they will then cross a valley road with no ripples on it really, into the town of Les Cabanes, and then it all changes. They go up the mountain. The police, by the way, took the decision today to close the approach to the finish an hour and a half ahead of planned schedules, because the traffic they felt was getting a little bit too much, and the crowds up here are enormous, and they're enjoying a magnificent day. You've got to watch the sun up here on the mountaintop, because it really does burn. Here we are looking now at the youngster Nozal, doing the ride of his life. Even if he hasn't helped the breakaway today, he's still in a great position to win at this stage.
It's a huge responsibility on his shoulders. He's placed himself into this leading breakaway with two very hardened campaigners, Laurent Jalabert and Laurent Dufaux. The order for him from Team Once will be to win this stage, because it borders the Spanish frontier just ahead of us, not far away from the finish of this race. Today is where the riders could continue over if they were on mountain bikes, and they could drop down the other side into Andorra or into Spain. They're now very much in the outskirts of Tarascon, and this is a most beautiful part of France. It's the gateway to Andorra, the small principality nestled away in the top of the mountains here, bordering France and Spain. Again, George Hincapie, I have to say, Phil, has done a splendid job He's supposedly a one-day classics rider and a team sprinter, but at the Tour de France, he puts all of his own hopes and all of his own desires to one side and does the team job. He works for the team, and that is absolutely and utterly responsible.
Yes, just as well they turn right there, otherwise they'd have gone down to the lovely Principality of Andorra, which is really mountainous. "25 kilometers to go now as the peloton go under the banner. They've controlled everybody except the three riders rather out in the lead. And 4 minutes 10 is the latest check coming in now, so the tempo is telling on the three leaders. Isidro Nozal, Laurent Jalabert, Laurent Dufaux. Best placed is Jalabert, 12th today, at just under 6 minutes behind Lance Armstrong of the United States. And for that reason, he'll just wait and see.
Well, Konechny's going to have a hard time when they hit the first slopes of this mountain, because and there he has decided, he realized he wasn't going anywhere at all, and he didn't want to have a meeting with what the French called l'homme à marteau, the man with the hammer, because very often the cycling jargon says if you bang your head against a brick wall like this, one day or another the man with the hammer is going to bonk you on the head, and he's decided that he's better off riding in the main field and being able to use the slipstream of all the other riders who are now in front of him.
Well, a few deep breaths required there by Konechny, because he'll soon be on the climb. Floyd Landis on the front now, doing his turn. Had a bit of a rough ride up the Col d'Aubisque yesterday, faltered there, but that was his first experience of the high mountains in the Tour de France, his first Tour de France. As Ivan Basso, the Italian, takes a drink. And Dario Frigo has come into the scene there, the blonde. Just checking out on his thigh muscles there. I think Frigo, although he had a rough ride towards the end yesterday, hangs on in 30th place overall. There's still plenty of riders here to challenge if they have the legs, and Armstrong was surprised they all disappeared yesterday on the climb. He really was not expecting to see the riders drop off one by one. Once team manager Johan Brunel saw that riders of good quality were dropping off the back towards the end, he asked Lance and the teammates that were left to lift the pace just a little, which is what they did, and the answer was only one stayed with them.
And Lance, in fact, asking his teammate Roberto Heras to slow down the pace on a couple of occasions, and they really did a brilliant job in cleaning up the look of the overall classification at the end of yesterday's stage, and now really a long gap to the men who Lance expects will challenge him over the next few days when we race in the mountains. Beloki 1 minute and 12 seconds behind right now. González de Galdeano lost himself some serious time as well yesterday. He's 1:48 down, and I think he will probably crack again today on the slopes of this very difficult ascent up here. But Armstrong has no reason at all to make special efforts to try and win this stage. He's the leader of the bike race. All he has to do is try and stay in the lead over the next few days. I think he would actually rather conserve some energy on a mountain stage like today and save it for a big attack on the slopes of the Mont Ventoux.
I think you're right. We'll find out in a couple of days' time. Jan Ullrich there driving the CSC car, team manager of this new Danish team, of which Laurent Jalabert is the undisputed leader here, and Jan Ullrich is the 1996 winner of the Tour de France, who's in astounding form on that occasion. First Danish rider to win. Underneath the banner, 20 kilometers to go now. Just 20 kilometers, 12 miles. We're on the outskirts of the town of Bouin. And very shortly, they will be heading through Sansat and then into Les Cabanes. And it's there where the climb starts. 4 kilometers before they start the climb. And this, we're looking down here, one of the glorious rivers. This will be the river Ariège, coursing through from, it rises in the Pyrenees and then goes out to the ocean, and it must look particularly cool to the riders today.
I tell you, on a day like this, when you've been in the saddle since just around about 10 minutes to 11 o'clock this morning, and we're now coming up to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that river of the Ariège looks very beckoning, I would say, to one or two bike riders. It'd be quite nice to put your feet into that right now, but unfortunately they still have to do 20 kilometers of today's stage, and 16 of those kilometers, Phil, are uphill to the summit here at the Plateau de Bay. An unbelievable ascent to 1,780 meters above sea level.
All accomplished in just 16 kilometers of climbing. We're going deep into the valley now. There's no way down this mountain tonight for everybody who's gone up it except the same way, which is going to mean we are going to be in one huge traffic jam. There's plenty of helicopters coming in at the moment. If we could just get a lift on one of those, Paul, that would be nice. That's the way Lance Armstrong will go off the mountain tonight, because the Tour de France does have a rule, which they actually issued a communique during the Tour, that the riders must only leave the mountain in their team cars and not by any other means, so they all get equally balanced. But as we look at the field now, that bunch gone down in size a little bit, hasn't it? From 177 riders down to what looks to be about 40. There's one of our helicopters overseeing the race. We've got at least half a dozen sat just outside our commentary box here, waiting to go down and show the VIPs, the Tour de France, on the slopes of the Plateau de Bay. And the bunch here now know that D-Day is just up the hill there and getting themselves ready for the ascent. All of the US Postal, who have worked all day at the front here for their man in yellow, will shortly try to launch him on the attack.
Well, all the big names, Phil, are starting to queue up right now onto the tail of this man in the yellow jersey, Lance Armstrong. There is Heras, but not too far behind is Joseba Beloki.
Chance to study the image of Lance Armstrong. Very rarely you see him under pressure, but he said yesterday he was under pressure. He was on an average day. He's chatting there with his team manager, Johan Brunel, on the two-way radio. But he was saying that he just dropped back down the line to check a few faces out when he was struggling, to see if everybody else was suffering like he was. And apparently they were, so that gave him a bit of encouragement.
The most important man for him to look at there, in fact, was Joseba Beloki, the man who he was very worried about. His team today have done, once again, an absolutely superb job. They have done everything that he has asked of them. They've set the tempo since the very first climbs of the day, when we went over the Col de Monte at 56 kilometers into the stage. And ever since then, it has been the same men on the front, working for their lone leader, Lance Armstrong. Joseba Beloki moving up there. You can see the pink jerseys of Team Once moving themselves up into 10th and 12th places. They will do whatever they can to try and stay in contact with Lance Armstrong on the early slopes of this climb as we get slowly but surely towards the finish. The main field now, Phil, at 20 kilometers to go, and the gap is starting to come down. It's 3:43.
Well, and as we speak, it is down to 3:40 is the official gap as they pass under that banner. Another 3 seconds chiseled off. So that's sort of a gap, Paul, of 3 minutes and 40 seconds if it continues. And we never agree with whoever does the television time gaps, but there we are. He's got 3:38. But I'm just thinking, Paul, that a 3-minute gap at the bottom of the climb, and I don't think those three can survive.
Be very difficult, in fact, because it all depends on the way the guys in the main field react. Armstrong doesn't need to ride up this mountain all of that hard. He just needs to conserve himself and see what the position is of the other men, the climbers from Spain. And if they do attack, then they can wipe away 3 minutes very easily in 16 kilometers. We have that favorite little recipe of mine on the flat stages, where we work out that you can lose around about 1 minute for every 10 kilometers of riding. Well, on the big mountain slopes like this, you can lose a minute every 2 to 3 kilometers, and those riders are well inside that time limit now. It doesn't look as if these riders are weakening at all, and I think the big question mark is, how can Isidro Nozal, the Spanish Once rider at the back, perform? Because he's really been riding the whole of today's race in an armchair.
Yes, well, it's not a very comfortable armchair, but I know what you mean. It's absolutely true. He's done nothing, and they say if a rider does ride in the slipstream of somebody else, he saves 30% of his energy, and that's what he's been doing today. Climbers, of course, don't like to ride in anybody's slipstream. They like to ride their own tempo. They know how hard they can go, and they don't like to be dictated to by another rider. And that is why Jalabert won't be too unhappy with having set the pace. Neither do Foe.
Well, this race has been here many times before. It's a long ascent, Phil, 15.9 kilometers. The average gradient is 7.8%. But I tell you one thing, I think the first few kilometers are around about 10 or 12%. At the summit, it's 1,780 meters in altitude. And in fact, the Tour de France may have only been here once before, but the race in the run-up to the Tour de France, the Route du Sud, uses this on many occasions. And we had a funny little chat this morning with ERIK Broekink, a man who has raced up here in the Tour of Spain, and he said he thought it was an easy climb.
Yes, well, Paul went up and said, I'm glad I'm not no longer cycling, ERIK, aren't you? He says, no, I love this climb. So that was the end of that conversation, really. In fact, Levi Leipheimer, the American leader of the Dutch Rabobank team in the event, he won the time trial up here in the Route du Sud just before this race started, and as a consequence won the Route du Sud itself. And let's hope he can accelerate a bit again today when he gets onto the slopes. We're with the leaders now. They've just started the lower slopes of the Plateau de Baille, and it gets steeper.
This is not going to be fun for the guys in the main field, all these three leaders right now. And just to put it all into perspective, they will be riding uphill from now for the next 40 to 45 minutes. And some of the guys like me behind, they will probably be riding up this climb for pretty close to 1 hour.
And in my case 2.5, but even so, as these three now settle in to their final challenge of the Pyrenees today, there are a couple of hills tomorrow very early on as they run away from the Pyrenees, which should not be decisive. So this is the major hill of the Pyrenees in this year's Tour de France. There's the peloton. I never cease to amaze at the speed these riders can pedal as they're going onto a climb as steep as the one we're about to go up, and driven on by the US Postal Service team of Lance Armstrong. The job now is very simple. You race to the limit of your ability. When you can't do any more, you get out the way. And that's as simple as that, isn't it, Paul?
It's been a hard day for all of these guys. Padronos there just moving off the front. George Hincapie will ride at the front for as long as he can. Hincapie, the large rider on the front with the white glasses. And as always, everybody welcomes the Tour de France into town, and we're getting ready now for a huge battle on the slopes of the Pyrenees.
And the artwork there done by the good people of Les Cabanes. Very nice it was too, I have to admit, as we now swing onto the climb of the Plateau de Baille. The board just passed by the leaders there said summit 16 kilometers. Floyd Landis is first around the corner.
It's not fun when you see that sign, I have to tell you. I've been there many times before, and when you see that, you know that you're queuing up for a lot of pain over the next few kilometers. Armstrong's men on the front here, and look at the crowd that have turned out. We will be looking right now at 10 miles of people watching a bike race.
Absolutely, and that makes tens of thousands of people. The Tour de France has lost none of its popularity. In fact, if anything, it is now more popular than ever before. 2 minutes 45 they've got, the three leaders, as they start the climb. I don't think it will be enough, but quite honestly I hope it is.
Well, the three leaders are very much on the early difficult slopes of the climb, with Laurent Dufaux quite happy to set the pace making. I would think he'd be the better climber of the three men at the front, because having finished twice 4th place overall in the Tour de France, you've got to be a pretty good mountain goat. Armstrong's men now starting to slip away from the front, and in fact it's the Once team coming forward to maybe try and put a bit of fear into the heart of Lance Armstrong, but they'll have to go just a bit harder than that if they're going to worry the man in the yellow jersey.
Well, I'm not sure that was expected by US Postal, to see the Once team force the issue. That might throw a few quivers of fear down the US Postal boys, because we expected them to follow US Postal. But they brought the honours to the front. The two top teams of this year's Tour de France thus far. First and second in the overall classification individual. First and second overall in the team race. So now there is pride at stake.
Well, Armstrong's men were obviously very happy just to do some pacemaking. This looks like Vladimir Belli. I didn't recognise him at first. He looks like he's changed his hairstyle. He's got a different colour. Yeah. He's actually bleached his hair blonde. This is Erik Zabel. Well, he doesn't have to worry about the King of the Mountains today, but this is announcing itself as being a very dangerous competition for Robbie McEwen and Stuart O'Grady, because this man is getting himself over the mountains this year, and he may well win the points competition on one of the mountain stages.
Well, he's now going to slide off the back if he has to, but he looks cool at the moment. His job done for the day. Mike Sepin-Besseman riding on the front with him there. Well, we are now looking at the riders at the back of what was left of the peloton on the lower slopes of the Plateau de Bailly, as we now see some riders slipping off. I just caught a glimpse there of Abraham Olano, former high finish in the Tour de France. He too is riding his last tour, will retire at the end of the season. Meanwhile, at the front, it looks as though US Postal have lost a number of riders now. They've called on the Spanish element of the team to start turning the pedals a little bit quicker at the front and keep the pace going, although this is Floyd Landis still there.
But Floyd Landis has obviously recovered after having a very difficult day yesterday. His first real serious day in the Tour de France mountains, and he's come to the front now having recovered. He dropped down the overall standings yesterday to 70th. These three leaders right now, Phil, have an advantage of 2 minutes and 27 seconds. And here's the move coming from Once.
Well, Once have been itching to break away today, and this looks like the first move. Once have launched an attack, and there are signs here US Postal may be losing control of the race today, which is a shock to us all, I think, because they have only two riders left around Lance Armstrong. I don't see Roberto Heras at the minute, and I've seen Once suddenly rush to the front, and they sent a rider off the front. It looks like Marcos Serrano.
Well, Armstrong has not panicked at all right now. In fact, I would think Roberto Heras is riding in third or fourth position there, just behind Armstrong. He will wait until the last possible moment. This is Chechu Rubiera, as Lance likes to call him. Jose Luis Rubiera on the front. Heras is there on the left-hand side. Joseba Beloki is very close in the pink jersey. The blue and pink jersey is Raimundas Rumsas. Now, he is very high in the overall standings at fourth place. At the back, there is Laurent Brochard. On the left-hand side, there is Dario Frigo. A lot of men are suffering.
Well, a lot of men are suffering, but you'd expect them to on this climb, which in slopes will bite, really bite as we continue up this mountain here. Also dropping off now, Vyacheslav Yakimov. US Postal have lost a man there. He's done his job for the day. We're now beginning to pick our way through the riders who hung on just long enough to see the start of the climb before they cracked on the steep slopes. Viertzeberg, who was in the early breakaway today, one of the 8 men that went, he's now said goodbye to the leaderboard for the day. And it looks like another one of the right. This is Christophe Oriol, has also gone off the back there. No, that's Stefan Burgess. He's cracked on the same team. They're falling away one by one now, and that was Marco Velo from Fassa Bortolo also gone. This is Bobby Julich, the American, who was third when we finished here in 1998 on this climb, and he's now slipped away off the back, and he knows it better than most. So somebody has really stepped on the gas because the riders have cracked. Inigo Cuesta, very good climber, was the front of those two riders. He's gone. Once, they brought back Serrano. They look as though they're trying to regain control of the head of the race. There was an element of panic there for a while. Armstrong didn't panic. He's right there with Beloki locked into his back wheel. And as we go now to an attack by Laurent Jalabert at the front, he knows they are coming. The last time check was 1:50, and he's had to go. Now, is he going to be wiped away in sight of the finish again? But he's going to give it his best shot.
What a tough bike rider this is. He could see the other guys were weakening. He could feel that the time was slowly but surely coming back from the main field to himself, so he decides to go out alone. It'll be a hard call for him to survive, and it depends just exactly how much reserves he's got in those big thighs of his. It's 1:51 back to the yellow jersey group, which is being led by Lance Armstrong's teammate, Jose Luis Rubiera.
Well, Jalabert is going to give it his best shot if he can survive. I don't know whether he can, but we'll find out very, very soon now. 12 kilometers to go to the top. Well, it does prove one thing, that Nozal, who had sat on all day, didn't have the legs there, Paul, to launch the attack.
Jalabert will be happy about that, because it's always a wonder when somebody sits on you for the whole day and sits in your slipstream. You know it's a much easier ride. Psychologically it may have been, but you know Laurent Jalabert is a tough character. This is now the group of the heads of state starting to form, and on the front is Jose Luis Rubiera. Armstrong is there. The time gap from the leader of the race, Laurent Jalabert, to Armstrong is 1:44 seconds. There, Raimundas Rumsas, Joseba Beloki on the left-hand side. All of the big names are in there. Andrei Kivilev was in there as well. And here is the darling of France, the former greatest climber that the Tour knew, Richard Virenque, and he is suffering to try and stay in contact, but it's not going to be his day in the Pyrenees.
are looking at Richard Virenque, 5 times the winner of the King of the Mountains. Went up to the leaders today, fell back to the peloton, and now is falling back from the head of the race here on the climb. We are waiting for a new time check, but at the moment it's around about 1 minute 30 seconds. There is a puncture at the back to Andrei Kivilev, and that is a shame, Paul, because he is 8th overall.
Kivilev, the man who finished 4th overall last year, is in the group with Lance Armstrong. If we have a look here, you can see Armstrong's men are still at the front. Rubiera there in 4th position, Roberto Heras. They're actually keeping Roberto Heras in reserve, I think, Phil, until the latter part of this climb.
Well, at the moment, it looks though Inigo Cuesta's got his place in the bunch there. He tries to stay away. As they come up the climb, as they continue on the climb now. And this is a very, very small group now, looking very, very settled as the riders continue. This is the pain now at the back of the course here. And once again, we are seeing riders crack wide open. Looks like Leipheimer here as well. The rider he's passing is Ivan Basso in the white jersey. There's going to be nobody left on this climb very shortly. There's so many riders getting dropped, they're going to reform in a big bunch because there is just a battle royale going. This is Christophe Moreau, who's had a good time in the mountains really, but now he is falling back, and I can't see many riders being left alongside Armstrong again.
It's really a question of elimination. This is the man who leads the bike race though, wears number 51, Laurent Jalabert. He now has an advantage of around about 1.5 minutes over the group of Lance Armstrong and the yellow jersey. Andrei Kivilev is in the group with Lance Armstrong at the moment, but men are being shelled off the back one at a time as the pressure is being made on the front of that group by Jose Luis Rubiera. You remember just a few moments ago you said it was 12 kilometers to go. Well, it was 12.8. We're only just going inside the 12-kilometer mark for these riders. Jalabert now can only hope to survive on the slopes of this very difficult mountain. 12 kilometers is still going to take him around about 25 to 30 minutes of climbing.
Well, and that is why he's not going to win the stage, I guess, because they are coming. They are saying 20 seconds is the time gap now. There's been such a cracking of the bunch. There is Laurent Dufaux. Ahead of him is the pink jersey, the Once rider who was in the breakaway, Nozal. But if our camera swings around, we're going to see the Armstrong Express coming up this mountain and wiping them out. And it looks like a battle royale between Armstrong again and perhaps Beloki.
Well, Tyler Hamilton is in the group of Lance Armstrong, but we're hearing over race radio that Levi Leipheimer appears to be in difficulty at the back of that climb alongside Axel Merckx, who we saw attacking on the descent a few moments ago. Laurent Jalabert in exactly the same situation as he was this time last year in the Pyrenees, trying to win himself a great Pyrenean stage, and exactly the same situation as he was in yesterday, on his own at the front of a Pyrenean mountaintop finish, hoping to survive from the onslaught of the return of Lance Armstrong and the US Postal Service team.
So the 3 leaders are split now by half a minute, and the Armstrong group a little more than 1 minute behind. Concentrating, he knows what's happening behind him now, does Laurent Jalabert. He's just got to stick with his guns because he's got no more strength left to accelerate. Here is what is left of the race here coming up now. Third to the right, that's Raimundus Rumsas, who's having a great tour. The rider in the pink is Beloki, and it looks, Paul, as though he's only got 2 teammates with him, Armstrong, here.
He has, but watch out for the man who's actually sitting in the wheels today, Roberto Heras. Maybe today is the day he's going to try and set up the win for his man. Heras there riding on the wheel of Beloki, who has 21. Levi Leipheimer, 101. He is going out of the back of the group with Axel Merckx. Just in front of him is one of the other riders. And in fact, it looks like Tyler Hamilton might be going off the back as well, because he's the man who wears number 52. So the American challengers to Lance Armstrong's superiority are not able to rival the man from Texas on the slopes of the Pyrenees.
Well, if we get back to Armstrong's group, we're going to find Óscar Sevilla is also now cracking. He is hanging on to the tail of this group. I don't know if our camera will show that, but he is in trouble. We've still got Botero here. He's tucked in there in that green striped jersey. But his young teammate, Sevilla, is the team captain, and he has gone off the back of that group. We look now, Dufaux and Isidre Nozel. But the main chase is only 30 seconds behind them. Battle Royale.
They're just hoping to survive and try and pull themselves back up to Jalabert, but Jalabert in fact is extending his advantage over them, and they are now 40 seconds behind. The group of Lance Armstrong is now just at 1 minute and 7 seconds.
This is Dufault. Now the hill is beginning to bite as the relentless tempo here. A much bigger group than we expected to be together, and at the moment ONCE are equal in numbers as they are with US Postal. They might slightly outnumber US Postal here, and they've still got another man up the road as well. And there is the situation with Óscar Sevilla dangling at the back and suffering to try and hang on. This is the man who won the Tour of Spain, or finished second rather in the Tour of Spain last year, lost it on the final day, currently in 13th place overall, and just trying to hold on to a very select group of bike riders here.
Well, he really is suffering to stay in contention right now. In fact, there are 4 ONCE riders in this group. ONCE are really the strength in numbers on the mountains. They really are the team that are hoping to try and dethrone Armstrong, but the fact is Armstrong has got some of the best climbers in the world alongside him to look after him. José Luis Ribiera is doing a magnificent job right now, but I think all of France would like to see this man win, and in his last Tour de France I would like to see him win one of these mountain stages, because he has been the most aggressive bike rider over the last couple of days. The 2 men in between are about to get caught. Idrizo Nozel, who wore the white jersey, is the best young rider in this year's Tour de France. He now gets a chance to see what the heads of state of cycling look like, and the work being done by what is now very much, apart from Lance Armstrong, a very Spanish-speaking group.
And just around the corner is a Swiss speaker, Laurent Dufault. He'll be back. The gap is now a little more than 50 seconds to Laurent Jalabert as they just gather them up and put them in their place. But it's interesting to see that ONCE are surviving here with 4 men. This is not quite the demonstration we saw from the US Postal team yesterday yet. If they can lift it anymore, it might be, but at the moment, it's looking a very open climb to the finish. There is Dufault, and now again in trouble, Óscar Sevilla at the back of the race.
I don't think anybody expected this from the man who won the best young riders competition last year at the Tour de France, and it's still a very large group there with Lance Armstrong. Laurent Jalabert is still hoping to survive, but it's going to be a tough call for him. At one stage they had an advantage of over 5 minutes on the main field, and right now that has crumbled to around about 40 seconds with 10 kilometers to go. These kilometers tick by so slowly on the slopes of the mountains, when you can imagine they take around about 1 minute and 10 seconds for a kilometer on the flat. Here on the big mountains where it starts to get steep, it can take them around about 3.
30 seconds as the Devil runs alongside Laurent Jalabert here. Little shake of his head. He just keeps his concentration now. He can't rise his speed anymore. I'll quickly give you the composition of this group on the right of our picture before it changes. Lance Armstrong, Roberto Heras, José Luis Ribiera, all US Postal. ONCE have got Beloki, Acevedo, González de Galdeano, and also Nozel for the moment. Botero is there, Kivalev is still there, Carlos Sastre, Unai Oza, Laurent Dufault in that group at the moment, and Óscar Sevilla just dangling off the back of them.
This is still a very large group, but look at the faces on these riders hoping to survive. Well, there you can see Laurent Dufault, after a long, brave attempt, is actually going out of the back of the group right now. And the man also going out of the back as well, one of the Banesto riders who is having a very difficult time right now, is Unai Oza.
Just a battle now to destruction as they go up towards the climb at 10 to go. Under the banner of 10 kilometers or 6 miles from the finish, more riders are dropped off. It looks as though we've lost here the rider now. Sevilla has gone again. He really has fought well there, Paul, and the ONCE rider going back there with him, surprisingly, is Jose Acevedo. So ONCE lose a man at the front.
Gives you an idea just how difficult this climb is when you see the best climbers in the world popping off the back of the group. This man really has to go deep into his courage this afternoon to try and keep himself high in the overall standings. He wants to finish high up. He's 13th at the start of today's stage, but that really now is a serious group starting to form there at the front. Riviera ticking out the pace as Roberto Heras did yesterday. Armstrong just sitting there, very happy to sit in the slipstream of his teammate, who is doing a marvellous job for him. Armstrong's face fill shows no sign at all of any emotion at all. They are now just 14 seconds behind Laurent Jalabert. In the next half a kilometre, I expect they will see the Frenchman and rejoin him after he led this race for, again, almost 150 kilometres.
12 the just men, 12 and a half if we look back, because Sevilla keeps coming in and going back again. Poor Laurent Jalabert, for the second time in as many days, is going to look over his shoulder and see Lance Armstrong. He can't believe his luck. He's almost given us the same stroke of his head as he did last time. Another brilliant day for Jalabert. Absolutely superb to go out on the attack for 2 days like he has done. He'll be rewarded this time at the finish with the lead in the King of the Mountains, but he really desperately wanted that stage win. In the distance, Óscar Sevilla. On the front is Jose Luis Riviera, the teammate of Armstrong. Armstrong looking for his chance, I feel, here, as the pedal revs are lifted again, the gaps open once more. This mountain is relentless now, and it's 9 kilometres still of it to go.
The two Spanish climbers on Team US Postal this year are in absolute superb condition. Last year they both had a very difficult time. Roberto Heras was nursed around the Tour de France with a very difficult tendinitis, but Jalabert can do nothing at all to stay with the acceleration of US Postal Service, so he has gone out of the back, and it's going to be very difficult for number 31 here, Óscar Sevilla, to reintegrate the group of the yellow jersey. He's doing a great job. He doesn't want to give up at all. He knows he has to ride well to keep the possibility of a high finish at Paris on his shoulders.
Well, the situation at the minute on the overall classification, remember, nobody ahead now. Laurent Jalabert, in fact, losing time to Armstrong. It would be the same with Armstrong, the leader of the race. As we look at the overall classification, Beloki would stay second. González de Galdeano is still here. He would stay third. Rumzas is still here. He would stay fourth. Santiago Botero would stay fifth. Acevedo is in danger of losing sixth place because he's just been dropped by the group.
I have a feeling that Serrano might have been dropped as well, and Ivan Basso was in a bit of bother just earlier as well. No emotion at all for Armstrong. It seems as if the group of Axel Merckx and Levi Leipheimer are starting to recover. Leipheimer in that group just going past Laurent Jalabert, and one man who is missing at the moment is Tyler Hamilton. His teammate Carlos Sastre is in this group, but there's no sight at all of Tyler Hamilton, who leads the CSC Tiscali team of Laurent Jalabert. Jalabert, after a brave day, a huge attempt to try and get himself the win, has been blown away, but he will have the recompense of being the King of the Mountains at the end of today's stage.
We're down to 11 riders in this group now. Cheers for Carlos Sastre on the road there. He's been in the action today as he now stays in that front group. Not Tyler Hamilton, rather Levi Leipheimer, seemingly recovering a little bit on the slopes and certainly preserving 15th overall, and might well yet climb up to 14th or 13th, because most of the names up here are already ahead of him overall. And Riviera now doing a brilliant turn. Jalabert counts them all by here, watched them go by. We saw Tyler Hamilton just pass him there, looking a little bit distressed on the climb. And Laurent Dufaux talking now with Jalabert, having a little bit of a joke. These are the men of the last 10 years of world cycling. They did it, they tried their best, it didn't work, but for Jalabert, the first prize today in the King of the Mountains awaits him in the form of a leader's jersey.
But what they have done is they've made it a very tough day today, because all day there's been a steady tempo set on the front by US Postal Service, and they will have weakened every bike rider in this race because there's been no respite at all in the pacemaking on the front. 8.5 kilometers to go to the finish, and still Jose Luis Riviera is on the front setting the tempo. One of the men brought across to the US Postal Service with Roberto Heras to bolster the team when it came to the mountains. Tyler Hamilton now just tapping Laurent Jalabert on the shoulders to say, well done, good ride, we nearly pulled it off. And Christophe Moreau, who we will have to wait to see what the referee's decision is tonight as to whether or not he will receive punishment for punching Carlos Sastre in the face. And by the way, Carlos Sastre is getting one over on him, because Carlos Sastre is in the front group right now.
That is absolutely right, and we're looking at Lance Armstrong. Sastre is the rider just near the back there. Kovalev doing a great ride here. He was fourth last year, he missed a podium place just in the final time trial of the Tour de France, but he's now riding fairly high in the overall and standing to improve his position today. The big surprise for me is Rumzas in this group, the only Lampre rider. You can see him just peeping through on the far side. Rumzas, a couple of years ago, did finish 5th in the Tour of Spain, but he's largely thought of as a single-day rider. But he's been very inspired since the prologue time trial in Luxembourg in this year's Tour de France.
Santiago Botero moving up there in the lime green strip of the Kelme squad, the team that has been in this professional sport for the longest, more than any other professional team. They've been at the top end of the sport. Santiago Botero lost a bit of time yesterday, but he dropped down into 5th place, and if it hadn't been for that puncture at a very bad time, he would probably be up in 3rd or 4th place right now. He, I think, will be looking to try and get himself the stage victory today. But watch in 6th position there, the blue jersey of Roberto Heras. I think today Lance Armstrong would like to try and offer the victory to his teammate, because he really would like to repay him for the work and the job that he did yesterday.
Well, there's no reason for Armstrong to attack. He's riding at the front. It's up to number 21, Beloki, to launch an attack and try and get back some of the deficit. He's starting the day, remember, 1 minute and 12 behind Armstrong overall. The only way he'll get time back is to get past Armstrong and open up the gaps. And right now they've got Beloki where they want him, pinned up on the inside of the mountain on the Plateau de Bay. Armstrong still relying heavily now on Rubiera, and Paul might be right. They're using Rubiera till he can't do any more and try and make a springboard for Heras.
The team have done a superb job throughout the whole of this afternoon stage. They've kept the pace very hard, making sure that the breakaway of Jalabert, Dufaux and Isidro Nozal never got more than 5 or 6 minutes, and slowly but surely they started to wind them in as soon as the slopes of this climb began. Rubiera is doing a brilliant job right now. He's been a long season professional. He turned professional back in 1995 for a very small Spanish team called Artiach, and since then he went across to Kelme, and he was brought across from Kelme to US Postal Service to ride alongside Lance Armstrong in the mountains, and that's exactly what he's doing today. He's fulfilling his contract. And look at this right now. We are looking at a mano a mano. There are 3 US Postal riders in this group, and there are 3 Once riders in this group. And I think today the tempo being set by Jose Luis Rubiera, nicknamed Chechu by all of the team, is actually striking fear into the Once riders. If they want to win this Tour de France, they've got to go out on the attack now.
The one odd man out in this group is sitting on the back there, number 207, Stéphane Goubert. He's a Frenchman of no real note, and yet he's sitting onto the hottest company of his life as he climbs up to the Plateau de Bay. Member of the Jean de la Tour team that was brought in at the very last minute. They've had 1 stage win, and it looks as though today he might well do a little bit of a ride here on the climb of the plateau. There is the Stars and Stripes, and they'll catch sight of Lance Armstrong out to lunch at the moment because he's having a little bit of intake of food as he starts the climb.
I tell you what, that's a pretty difficult thing to do, to actually eat on a mountain stage like this going uphill. Most guys will try and eat on the descents and on the flat stages if they can. Look at the pedaling action there of Rubiera on the front, just sitting tucked in nice and calmly behind him. I think they're actually picking up the pace just a little bit here. In fact, you can see this is Rubiera's kick now towards the steeper part of the climb. He's lifting the place. I think they want to try and put time between themselves and 1 or 2 other riders. That's popped Andrei Kivilev off the back immediately, as well as Stéphane Goubert.
Well, Goubert certainly couldn't lift it up 1 more notch. Doing a great ride, there he is, but Andrei Kivilev will be upset. He's going to have to dig deep, this rider from Kazakhstan, because the order's gone out from Lance to just lift the revs and see what happens. And he's reduced it by 2 riders, and here goes Heras. Now, is it pacemaking or an attack? And it might be pacemaking. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's pacemaking, yeah.
Well, it's put this man into serious difficulty as well, because they're literally blowing all of the Once riders away. Serrano now has popped off the back of the group. Roberto Heras has come forward right now. Joseba Beloki is surviving, and Igor González de Galdeano has now gone. We are going down to the same trio as yesterday: Roberto Heras, Lance Armstrong and Joseba Beloki. But today they may well try and work one over on Joseba Beloki, because I think this is going to be a serious show of defiance by the man on the front, Roberto Heras. He wants to drag his team leader away, and his team leader in the yellow jersey would like to give him a victory.
Just under 7 kilometers to go, and we have the same 3 riders, but Armstrong has lifted the revs. It's up to Beloki. Beloki must go round Heras or lose ground He's got to come round him now, and I don't know whether he can. Armstrong has made his move. Now, he had planned to attack here when he reconnoitred the area in May. We thought he might have changed his idea because he had the lead already yesterday, when that to him was a little bit of a surprise. Beloki has got to come, otherwise the Tour de France for him has ended right now.
But Beloki's trying to survive. He's trying to keep in contact with Armstrong, but look out for Heras. And in fact, Armstrong doesn't look to me right now to be going full bore. He's waiting to see. He's tempting Beloki to try and close the gap down to him. And look at this. I have a feeling any moment now we will see an acceleration come from Roberto Heras, because Heras is very comfortable on the wheel of Beloki. Armstrong right now is not opening up the big gap, and Heras is very happy just to stay there.
Well, that's his job, to sit on Joseba Beloki for the last 2 years, third overall in Paris in the Tour de France, currently lying in second position. But now all Lance Armstrong is doing is repeating what he did in May by himself, and that's go out for a day's training. He's just sitting here pedaling like he's taught himself. The only good thing is it's a little bit warmer than it was in May. It was in the -Celsius temperatures then when he got to the top. Today it's around about 30 degrees Celsius.
Well, this was the hero of the day, and look at that time gap already. Laurent Jalabert is over 3 minutes behind Lance Armstrong at the front of the bike race.
Well, Lance Jalabert won't be at all interested in what is happening at the front of the race right now. Now, a little show of defiance by Beloki, and I think that's all it was, because I don't think he can pick his pace up to go back up to alongside Lance Armstrong. Armstrong out of the saddle all of the time at the moment, keeping this perpetual cadence going that destroys the bike riders around the world. And once he knows he's beaten him, he'll settle back into his own rhythm. And in the next 5 kilometers, just how much time can he gain?
Well, you know, he doesn't even really need to do this. He's leading the bike race at the start of the day by 1 minute and 12 seconds. What he's doing is riding away from the rest of the field, stamping his authority on the Tour de France today. Put all this into perspective, by the way, Phil, Laurent Jalabert has lost 6 minutes on the climb so far, and this is the group behind, and look how Botero is suffering. He's up alongside Serrano and Igor González de Galdeano, the man who led this race for such a long time. These men now can only hope to survive. There is Raimundas Rumsas on the far side, and Armstrong is slowly but surely opening the gap between himself and Joseba Beloki and his own teammate Roberto Heras.
Rumsas looking back here to Serrano. Is anybody going to help me? González de Galdeano. These riders are together with Rumsas. Nobody going to help out here. Botero is there. 4 great mountain climbers rather, and they can't get near this man, who often tells us he's not a climber. It's a different type of racing as far as he's concerned. He just pedals quickly and rides them all off his wheel. Richard Virenque looks as though he's just come out of the shower right now. 5 times a winner of the King of the Mountains. Take a bottle and receive that little professional foul, a little push off the offering hand there from the director sportif. But nobody's going to complain about that. This is a vicious day in the Tour de France, as Armstrong now, through the exhaust of our helicopter and the shimmering heat of a hot day on the Plateau de Bataille, is now going to put his name in the record books. The only other man who's won here is Marco Pantani.
Well, I think that was a correct slip of the tongue you made there, Phil, because Plateau de Bataille means the plateau of the battle, and that's exactly what's happening right now. This is a huge battle that Armstrong is delivering to himself and to the men who expect to outthrone him. And look at that, the gap is now becoming much more serious. It's slowly but surely opening. It's now hovering at 15 seconds. Roberto Heras is just sitting there for the moment, waiting to see if Beloki will fail. And if Beloki does fail, I wouldn't be surprised to see Roberto Heras launching the counter-attack. It's still an awful long way to go to the summit for Lance Armstrong right now, and he still has the frame of mind to sit up, breathe easily as he can, and take the drinks on board.
Well, in effect, Heras is 5 full minutes of taking second place in the Tour de France. At the moment, he's not in a position to do much about it as we go under 5 kilometers. Yes, still 5 kilometers to go. But there is a real chance, people already talking of a US Postal 1-2 in this year's race, as we switch back to the fatigue of Laurent Jalabert, because in the mountains still to come, this is a very tough tour now. A relatively calmer day tomorrow, then we climb at the Giant of Provence, Mont Ventoux, And then we have two brutes, La Plagne and the Deux Alpes in the Alps before we go on to the final time trial and then the finish in Paris. Still an awful lot of racing to go, but there is nobody does not believe that Armstrong is not now going to win this Tour by less than 10 minutes.
Face there on Joseba Beloki, he's really suffering. Armstrong is not opening up a huge gap at all. In fact, it's just crept up a couple more seconds to 17 seconds, and Beloki is basically riding his individual time trial right now. He is trying to limit his losses on the Texan, who's gone off on the hope of another lone victory, just like the victory he got himself yesterday. He would love to have offered that victory to the man who wears number 3 there, Roberto Heras, but what an incredible pedaling action of this man, who after his testicular cancer, Phil, lost himself 20 pounds in body weight, but he retained nearly all of the strength that he had. Heras has gone. Heras has attacked, and now this is what they were waiting for. This is, I think, why Armstrong hasn't opened up the gap at all. He was looking at the Spaniard who was in front of him. Look at this. He waited to see Beloki suffering, and he went straight over the top of him. This was the strongest man of the race yesterday, and very quickly Armstrong will get that information from Johan Bruneel. I think it'll be 1-2 tonight.
He will wait. Once he knows he has cracked Beloki, he will wait for Heras, and he will give him the stage as a present from yesterday. That would be the form, I would think, of the team, and it's working out to perfection. Now this little climber from Spain, magnificent yesterday, the outstanding man on the mountain, is now flying towards his captain.
But what a professional. He looked over his shoulder to make sure that he had a very good gap between himself and Joseba Beloki, because he would not want at all to drag up Armstrong's competitor up to the wheel of the man who wears number 1. In a few moments' time, Armstrong will certainly get that information from Johan Bruneel. He will lift his pedaling action just a small amount, and I think he has done that right now, and he will very shortly be with Armstrong, and what a sight that will be.
Well, the American flag is waving there for this brilliant athlete. Once given a 20% chance of life because of a cancer, he's recovered and returned to win the Tour de France 3 times, and no one will give you odds against him winning it a 4th. Here we are in the first mountain stretch of this year's race, the Pyrenees. Little Roberto Heras, Lance selected him, handpicked him, brought him to the team to help him in the mountains. Now he's going to wait for him, and I think will give him the stage win, because yesterday he says Heras was simply fantastic, and if he could have let him win yesterday, he would have done. But it was too dangerous because Joseba Beloki was right there as well. Now Armstrong keeps the revs up, but he knows the little man from Spain will pedal just as quickly as he can as we head towards the summit of the Plateau de Baille. And I think, I've lost count now, we're looking for a 4-kilometre banner. Yes, we are. 4 kilometres to go for Lance Armstrong. The clock will start now on Roberto Heras.
Well, they're coming out of the very steep part of the climb right now. There's the 4-kilometre banner that Armstrong went under a few moments ago. And here is Roberto Heras. What a beautiful pedaling action. This man is a brilliant little climber, and one day he too may win the Tour de France. He came alongside Lance Armstrong to learn, to try and improve his time trialing ability. But Beloki is also making a pretty smart recovery here too. He is inside that gap as well. 12 seconds to Roberto Heras. They're on the false flat part of this course right now. This is the part of the course where you can get the big gear in and start ticking it over. And you can see there Beloki changing up the gears.
Well, this is the plateau bit of the climb now, and Armstrong knows he's coming. He looked over his shoulder. There are the gaps, 13 seconds and 25, as Lance Armstrong now just keeps his rhythm going. He would dearly love Heras to come alongside him and say thanks for everything you've done for 2 days for me in the mountains, and he's given him a brilliant lead overall now. He'll be heading out to at least 1.5 minutes in the classification tonight, unless Beloki recovers on this false flat. Heras looking over his shoulder to see. If Beloki catches him, of course, Heras will stop working. He won't continue to take him up to the leader, and he's always checking on that. The face of the fighter, the only fighter seemingly in this year's Tour de France who believes he can have some form of combat with Armstrong.
The gaps are very close indeed right now. Armstrong leads Roberto Heras by 14 seconds. In fact, Heras is slipping back, and it's then just 12 seconds to Joseba Beloki. if Heras doesn't close the gap on Armstrong right this moment, it's going to be Armstrong riding on his own towards victory. Armstrong really dare not slow down too much because he needs to build his advantage over Beloki, whose advantage which was at the start of today 1 minute and 12 seconds.
There's a small time bonus on the line as well, which will push him out even further. But the other two will also get time bonuses, which won't completely nullify the escape. But Armstrong himself now just doing all he need do to increase his lead in today's stage of the Tour de France. There is just those 10 seconds between the two Spanish riders. Beloki looks to me as though he's coming back because Heras has decided he can't reach his captain.
I think he was told to sit up there because just at the moment when the US Postal Service team car went by, I think that was the moment he ceased to chase the front man, Lance Armstrong. He will now wait for Joseba Beloki and I think allow Joseba Beloki to set the tempo behind. What was happening there was that Heras was caught in between the two men and he was acting as a carrot, and he was the man that in fact Joseba Beloki was aiming at to catch, and that was encouraging the man who was in third place on the road.
Far down the slopes now, the ailing figure of Laurent Jalabert wants the leader. As we now see at 3 kilometers to go, Heras has turned off. Beloki is coming back, so Heras will now sit behind him and wait and maybe choose to sprint to second place. Armstrong has been given his head now as the leader of the team to build on his overall position and to increase his lead in the Tour de France tonight. There is Roberto Heras taking now the ticket collector's position, the man who will do no work and just see everybody is on board.
Well, if this had been just a little bit steeper than it is right now, I think Roberto Heras would have made contact with Lance Armstrong. But Armstrong is on the part of the course which absolutely suits him. He can use his special power to get the bigger gear ticking over right now. And he has now started to build the big time gap over Joseba Beloki. It is now 35 seconds to Heras and Beloki right now. Heras has to play the team role. He was hoping, I think, to get himself a victory here. Coming back, this is Santiago Botero. And in fact, it looks as if the man Igor González de Galdeano is also pulling himself slowly but surely back to his own teammate.
Well, trying to, as the gaps close together, because the queen bee of the pack has just simply flown away and left the workers on the mountainside. And here he is, just riding to glory. This will be his 14th stage win in the Tour de France. A stage win which has gone past the memorial stone to his friend Fabio Casatelli. Means a lot to Lance as he now continues his way to the top of the plateau. The kilometers are a little bit easier now as we start to level out on this beautiful mountain, covered in thousands of people today to watch an American ride to victory again.
Look at this pedaling action as well, Phil. That's the pedaling action that exactly the same as he had in the team time trial some time ago. And you look at that compared to the pedaling action of these two riders right now. It was that pedaling action that may well have lost Lance Armstrong the individual time trial around Lorient. But right now it is being used to absolute perfection on the last 2 kilometers of the climb up here to the Plateau de Bay.
2 kilometers, less than 2 miles, 1.8 to be precise for Lance Armstrong. And he's in amongst the motorbikes now. They'll chase those away as he continues progress towards the summit, as everybody just simply goes berserk here. This is what they wanted to see. They've waited probably 8 hours and perhaps even 24 for those that came last night. The Basque flags are flying and they're waving at an American who is destroying the riders from Spain as he just rides towards the summit. A bigger lead in the Tour de France today, and no one will give you any odds now as to who will win this year's Tour de France.
Well, under the banner there of 2 kilometers to go, it's 32 seconds to these two chasers right now. But the position of their pedaling action is completely different to that of Lance Armstrong. They are now just hoping to survive. Joseba Beloki is trying to increase his advantage in the second place of the Tour de France this year. And Roberto Heras is going to leap up the overall standing this afternoon. Probably he will find himself well inside of the top 10. But Armstrong, Phil, is ticking away with that most unbelievable pedaling action which he has cultivated over the years since he came back from testicular cancer. The crowd here are encouraging every bike rider. They're even encouraging Lance Armstrong at the front. Even though the majority of people here are Basque, they are recognizing what is an unbelievable athletic performance.
Well, they're shouting because they're saluting magnificent athletes here in the Pyrenees who have ridden to their maximum over some of the highest mountains this country has to offer. One man has proved he is head and shoulders above everybody else, but they'll shout even the last man home. It's a tremendous achievement by all of the riders. But what can you continue to say about this man? Superlatives simply don't describe just how he rides a bike. He comes here in the winter, he checks every inch of the road, he knows exactly where he's going to attack, exactly what he's going to do. He doesn't care who enters the Tour de France, he just sticks to the game plan.
And the game plan he's got worked out very many months in advance, and that's why he comes to look at these courses, and that's why he plans everything down to the final little minute of his attacks. Laurent Jalabert is almost 3 kilometers behind Lance Armstrong on this climb. That 3 kilometers is going to take him around about 9 minutes to cover. Armstrong right now can see the Flamme Rouge in front of him. That little bridge over the road you can see there is the last kilometer of today's stage, and Armstrong still shows no signs of weakness at all. He's pedaling absolutely perfectly. This, especially in cadence he's managed to cultivate over the last few years, is very reminiscent of the cadence in the mountains of Miguel Indurain, and the great Spaniard. He won 5 Tour de France's in a row.
Well, he's nosing away to almost a minute on the chase now, a minute added to the 1:12 he already has, plus his small time bonus on the line. If he would not fall off 2.5 minutes, it might even be nearer 3 minutes overall when we see the final situation tonight. Armstrong taking the shortest way to the summit of the plateau and building on every inch of the way. This will be his 6th win of the season, and well, I won't say it'll be the sweetest, but it'll just be another routine day for this magnificent athlete.
It reminds me what we said very much earlier on today, Phil, you and I, comme d'habitude, it said in the French newspapers this morning, business as usual. That's exactly what it has been for Lance Armstrong this afternoon, and that's also what it has been for his team, who've done a magnificent job setting up this victory. Joseba Beloki is the man wearing number 21 there. He's just trying to keep himself as close to as possible to Lance Armstrong this afternoon, and Armstrong's teammate there wearing number 3, Roberto Heras, again doing an absolutely superb job to set up victory number 14 for Lance Armstrong here in stages at the Tour de France.
And no one currently racing in the professional circuit has won that many stages in the Tour de France. 14 for Lance Armstrong. He'll claim his 3rd yellow jersey of the Tour, having won the prologue, and his 3rd stage in this year's Tour de France. And on this sort of form, Paul, just how many stages can he win? The record, by the way, is held by Freddie Martins, and in post-war years by Freddie Martins and Eddie Merckx, 8 wins.
Well, you know, if you look at the number of mountaintop finishes that are still left to go, Lance Armstrong could probably win most of those as well. I think he may well just try and ride a much more tactical race going into the next big mountains terrain, which is going to be the Mont Ventoux and then followed by the Alps. But this is going to go down as a great victory, one that was set up perfectly by his team. He's inside 200 meters to go right now.
Lance Armstrong left no doubt in anybody's mind, the #1 bike rider, the winner of the Tour de France for the past 3 years, and he will be the world ranked #1 by the end of this tour again, as he now races to increase his overall lead. 2 profitable days here in the Pyrenees. Yesterday it was close, 6 hours aboard that saddle, and this time a little punch in the air yesterday. It's a clear 2-arm salute today, because today he laid the foundation which will win him the Tour de France again this year.
And did you see that, Phil? 6 hours in the saddle, an average speed of only 33 kilometers an hour today. That's 19 miles an hour. That gives you an idea of just how difficult today's stage has been. Joseba Beloki now is just trying to lose as little time as possible, but he's already lost himself 30 seconds on the clock on the finishing line. That added up to the bonus is 50, so it's going to be a big plummet down tonight.
Well, I wonder if Heras will make it a 1-2 for US Postal. He's itching to go over the top of him. He'll wait till he sees the line at 45 seconds the gap. Beloki won't have the legs now. He's tried to limit his losses as a little Roberto Heras grits his teeth, drives up to the line. US Postal 1st and 2nd. Heras will climb up the overall classification tonight. He might even get a separate time as he comes round to the line. 1 minute and 2 behind, 1 minute 3, and probably 1 minute 5 for Joseba Beloki. as Botero comes in after that, and Igor González de Galdeano after that.
So the same three riders alone at the finish for the second day running, although this time Beloki had to yield not just to Armstrong but to Heras as well. Raimundus Rumsas rode surprisingly well for 6th, and even more surprising was Carlos Sast in 7th, especially considering that he did it after outpointing Christophe Moreau in a bantamweight eliminator earlier on in the stage. Well, afterwards Moreau wouldn't even commit himself to no comment, so it was down to Sast to give his side of the story.
Pues que es un señor que no tiene respeto por nadie y no merece la pena hablar de él, ¿no? No hace falta hacerle publicidad porque él solo se la hace. Pues es un corredor que siempre no tiene respeto por nadie, quiere ir siempre donde él quiere y no sabe que la carretera es para todos los corredores, ¿no? Prefieren hablar de este señor.
The man who started it all eventually finished 11.5 minutes down, consoled by the acclaim of the crowd and his fellow riders, and no doubt also by the fact that he's now leading the King of the Mountains competition. 24 minutes back was ERIK ZABEL, like Robbie McEwen, well out of the points for the stage finish, and therefore still in the green jersey by a single point. Now here's what the stage did to the standings. Armstrong confirms his status and extends his lead. Beloki is the closest man to him, but getting further away, nearly 2.5 minutes back now. Heras is up to 7th after 2 great days riding in the mountains. David Miller slips to 74th. Two days in the Pyrenees, 2 stage wins for the defending champion. And the best Spanish climber was riding on his team. Beautiful scenery, but a pretty demoralising picture for Lance Armstrong's rivals. Good afternoon. Stage 13 was a bit of a recovery day really to split up what might otherwise be a fatal 1-2 punch of the Pyrenees and Mont Ventoux. The scheduling was academic for Jackie Durand, mind you, because he was thrown off the race last night for using a team car to drag him up some of the climbs. The cameras didn't see it, but evidently the commissaires did. Mind you, the car can't have been going very fast because he still came in 41 minutes behind the leaders yesterday. Anyway, he's now on his way home, and lucky not to be joining him is Christophe Moreau, who the commissaires decided was the aggressor in yesterday's fight with Carlos Sast, although to be honest, there was about as much actual fighting in it as your average Audley Harrison bout. Anyway, Moreau was given a 2-minute penalty, which since he was 20 minutes down to start with won't mean much to him, and Carlos Sast got 20 seconds, which seemed to confirm his view that he was the injured party. Now here's a look at the stage 13 route. 171 kilometres with 3 climbs near the start, but otherwise flat until Béziers, where there was a little kick up towards the finish line. Perfect day for a breakaway after one hard stage and before another, and things kicked off as early as the 8-kilometre mark, with a break forming over the first climb of the day. And in it were Laurent Jalambert, surprise, surprise, and David Miller, who, having survived 2 tough days in the mountains, was looking fresh.
I would think the fastest man in the group is David Echevarria. He's got a very explosive finish. But watch out for the move coming from the man in orange and blue at the back, Michael Bogard. Cleverly moving to the back. He obviously knows right now that his teammate Bert Zeberg is 42 seconds behind, but using every opportunity he can to miss 1 or 2 turns at the back of this group.
Yes, the 2 riders I think are aware their 2 teammates are trying to get up here, but I think the Benesta rider's got no chance now. Well, he's sitting on the back of Mazzolini, and the gap we're giving, though, they're falling back as we speak here. Mazzolini hasn't got the legs to finally close down. Remember, he's been on the attack really since the very first kilometre today. They're now saying 25 seconds to those riders, and nearly a minute to Laurent Jalambert and the breakaway, rest of it, and 11 minutes still to the main field. So I think that these are the 5 to sort it out, and David Miller is the man who has sorted out the shape of these 5 riders. A very tricky journey across Béziers through these little narrow streets. They're using the one-way streets in the wrong direction because they are the straightest line into a rather complex town, and then they will go out into a good boulevard via an underpass, and then they will climb up to the finishing line. And well, it is a strong man's finish, not a pure sprinter, and any one of those riders in that leading 5, if they read it right, can win the day.
It's a difficult sprint from the last kilometre. The last kilometre they go around a small traffic circle, and then the road gradually begins to kick up from there, but it's in the last 500 metres after a huge sweeping bend at the bottom that it really kicks up to the line. These are the 4 men who really got caught out. Bobby Julich is 44th overall at the start of today. Beat Zuberg won't do too much, the man in orange there, because his teammate is in the leading group of 5. Miguel Martinez is further forward. In fact, the gap must be around about the 1 minute mark right now, Phil, because they are letting the team cars go forward. The referees control the gaps in this race to absolute perfection. But once the 1 minute gap is given, the team managers want to go forward. And they are there all of the time with their hands ready to hit the horns to put the referees under pressure.
And there are the referees in the red car with the flashing light. Once that light is turned on, no one is allowed to go past that red vehicle at all without first requesting permission from the referee by radio. As the riders are now in the closing kilometres of the race, they have the freedom of the road. The gap is now 40 seconds and 56 seconds with 11 minutes and 16 back to the field. David Echeverria swinging out, wanting to know why Michael Bogart isn't going to come through. Makes him come through, sits on his back wheel.
Echeverria's a very wily character, a good bike rider, 2 stage wins in the Tour de France in the past. He's also had to abandon the Tour because of a nasty crash on day 1. But with all of his injuries, he still rode on for 15 days before he climbed off in the year 2000. Roland Brochard there, he's won himself a stage in the Tour. Miller looks absolutely perfect. I think if he wants to get this win, he's going to have to launch a vicious attack with around about 1 kilometre to go. But everyone right now is getting exceptionally nervous. And look at this. This is tactical right now. This man doesn't need any information. They have race radios, but what it is doing is allowing Michael Bogert to sit in the back of the group, miss his turns, pretend that he's waiting for his teammate to come forward. But right now his teammate's out of it completely. He's 1 minute behind.
Well, Bogart was once talked about as a future winner of the Tour de France. He's never been quite that good for the overall top shot, but he certainly is good for a stage win. He's done it only once before. A terrible day, it was pouring with rain. He took extreme risks on the roundabouts, very slippery surface in Aix-les-Bains, but the result was he won the stage.
And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. This is the chasing group now with Laurent Jalabert. They're 1 minute behind right now. They will just ride to the finish and hope to survive. And Jalabert once again getting himself some points as the most aggressive bike rider in the Tour. But again, the 3rd day on the run he's been on the attack, but the 3rd day on the run he won't get the win. The win will go to one of these 5 riders right now, Phil.
And here we go. Oh no, it's somebody else. It's Brochard who's gone first. Brochard has looked, and you see how quick Bogart spotted that one, and Miller. And they've locked on to Laurent Bogart. In fact, they're talking about Bogart, Paul. He finished 10th last year. This year he's out of the hunt for a high finish, so he's gone for the stage wins like David Miller, it seems. Now we are crossing the streets of Béziers. It looks a lot nicer than it did when we came through. This was a 3-lane highway, totally blocked with vehicles. It's actually a one-way street. They'll filter off towards the right as they leave town. They go round the bottom half of the town, and I believe they go under the underpass. We came over the top, and then they'll turn left and start what is a long, well-judged climb to the finish. Now, if anybody in this group knows this finish, that might be to a big advantage. Watch out for the little man in orange, because this is the sort of finish he will love. David Echeverria. Miller not making any mistakes so far. 3rd wheel for him. I'm not too sure what Michael Bogart is playing at here. He's dicing around at the back, but he doesn't seem to be at all settled.
Well, Echeverria feels confident right now. He responded immediately to that attack, and if you let a guy go right now and give him 50 or 100 metres advantage, having been at the front of the bike race for 163 kilometres, you're never going to nail him back. They're within 3 kilometres to go right now. Echeverria riding towards the front. He wants to keep the tempo high. I think he feels confidence that he's got the ability to win this stage today in the sprint. Miller looks very cool, and he is very alert as well. He's on the far side looking at the other guys, and all of the time it's Michael Bogert of Holland on the back in the blue shorts there. There is another move following Laurent Brochard. Everyone wants to get off the front because they're scared of leaving it down to the final sprint.
Brochard has been anchored again, and Bogart decides it's too early for him, so they'll freewheel again. Dangerous moments because the 2 chasers are at 45 seconds. If they slow down, they'll close in rapidly. We've seen races won from the back in the last 500 metres in the past. It's a minute 3 to Laurent Jalabert, while the peloton are still 11 minutes down. And again, this is number 3.
Brochard, he's trying, he's kicking, but look at that. Echeverria in the 2nd position there. He's trying to get onto the wheel of the man from France who was a world champion in San Sebastian. And in fact, David Latassa has got across the gap to 3 men, and now Miller has to dig deep into his reserves to come back, but they have done. and still 5 men. But look at the crowds, Phil.
Unbelievable. I think this is where we go down below, in which case we'll lose pictures for a moment. We'll have to stay above the tunnel, obviously. No, it's a little bit further yet. 2 kilometers to go now. This massive crowd on this beautiful town here at Béziers. And Brochard, well, they know he's frisky, so they're going to leave him on the front. David Echeverria tempts them to come left, and he's wandering around the road, inviting them to attack.
He feels good, he feels confident, he's being very alert. He's the man who is responding to all of these attacks right now. The reason there are attacks is because they feel that Echeverria has got an explosive effort required to win the stage towards the end. But Brochard again digging deep, former world champion. Michael Bogaert of Holland is nailing him down slowly but surely. But look at the little man in orange there. Echeverria, 2 stage wins to his credit, and right now they're under the tunnel. I wonder who's going to come out.
Let's hope we can find where they come out. There they are, and they're still all together. Well, one rider is off the front now, and it is David Lataza. Lataza of Benesto is gone, the man they probably would least mark, as he now makes a move, and there's got to be action. It's Miller who is going after them. Miller and Echeverria is the rider trying to nail him back, but it's going to be a hard fight. But Miller's got a lot of speed in those legs.
Well, if Miller's got anything right now, the first thing he should do is get onto the tail of Lataza and launch the counter-attack. But you can see David Echeverria is nailing him back slowly but surely. In fact, so has Michael Bogaert. And the man who's been caught out a little bit but is reintegrating the leading group is Laurent Brochard. Brochard is in a good position right now to launch another attack, but he's on the wrong side. Inside 1 kilometer right now. They are all nervous. They are all waiting for another attack. There's only one more chance now to launch an attack off the front. If they don't go now, it's going to go down to the final sprint. Now, this is the traffic circle I was talking about a few moments earlier, but from now onwards, Phil, it's nearly all uphill to the finish. It's not much, but after 100 miles in the saddle, it's a long climb.
And it's who is going to judge the sprint to the best. They've tried to rid each other, but it hasn't worked out. Now it is going to be a 1 dash to the line, and you've got to judge your sprint to perfection. It is a long way up this road. Echeverria is making it plainly obvious he is feeling like the wind today. He's looking at everybody. They'll ride on one side of the road here, forcing the attack only on the right shoulder of the riders. Lataza, by the way, at the front, only ever won 1 race in his life a couple of years ago, and he's starting the sprint. Well, that'll cost him the race, because you can't lead out for the line and win. But look now at the face of Echeverria in 2nd place. Bogaert is there. Brochard is dropping off the back a little bit. Miller is in 4th place. Miller's going to have to say something special here as they come over the top towards the line now. Lataza is leading out Echeverria to perfection. One Spaniard leading out the other, but they're not friends, and he realises now, and Echeverria won't go through. Miller waits widely. Take the wheel of Brochard. Yes, he does, because Laurent Brochard's seen his chance now. Miller is shoulder to shoulder as they come to the line now. Brochard is going. David Miller might finish this one off. He's won a stage in the Tour of Spain before like this. Now, can he win this one? David Miller is going to take the stage, and absolutely brilliantly done. David Miller is not the fastest sprinter in the world, but you would have thought so today.
Well, he was clever. He was very clever there. Echeverria, the first to congratulate him. A brilliant move by David Miller. He waited. The most nervous man in the group was David Echeverria. He was the fastest man in the group.
But a win for Britain in the Tour de France today. The only British rider in the race. David Miller takes the honours.
As David Echeverria now knows to his cost, Miller brilliantly outmanoeuvred the Spaniard to take the stage win, with Michael Bogaert, Laurent Brochard and David Lataza making up the numbers. 10 minutes behind them, ERIK Zabel and Robbie McEwen were winding up for a sprint to decide the lead in the points competition.
Here they are now as Hushot starts the sprint. O'Grady in the slipstream there. For the moment, Zabel is pushed a little bit back, and McEwen is hanging on that back wheel of Zabel. Now out of the middle comes Gian Matteo Fanini in that pink jersey, looking for Zabel. But it's a good lead out for Stuart O'Grady. This Danilo Hondo, though, has gone over the top. Hondo leading out Zabel now. O'Grady dodges wheels in the middle as Hondo comes to the front. Now Baden come up to the left of our picture, and Jean Ferrada is in there as well. But now Baden Cook is going to try and take the lead, but Danilo Hondo here is coming up wondering where his teammates are. He doesn't know what to do, but the sprint is starting now, and it is where the green and the white jerseys go, and McEwen is coming on the left here. Chopped a little bit out of it. He's going to finish ahead of Zabel. It is touch and go, but I do believe that they will now be equal on points.
Well, they were, but that activated the tie-break procedure, which starts with stage wins, of which they've each got 1 apiece. McEwen, though, has been marginally better placed at the finish over the rest of the stages, so he now leads the green jersey competition by no points. As to who'll be wearing it by the end of tomorrow, though,
no predictions.
None from the race director either. Jean-Marie Leblanc was busy congratulating David Miller, who now has a road stage win to go with his prologue victory 2 years ago. The first British rider to register one since Max Chandry in 1995.
I was on a mission today. I told the team that I wanted to win today, and I knew I had to go on the first climb after like 8 kilometers, so I put myself in the front line of the start for once, and I thought, right, this is it, I'm going. And yeah, I was relaxed, but I was confident.
All right then, let's update the overall for you. Although there's not much to update really, because all the big names finished in the bunch. Laurent Jalabert sneaks into the top 10, courtesy of being in the break. And David Miller took back 10 minutes of the 40 he lost saving his legs yesterday. Stage 14 had just one climb on it. Unfortunately for the riders, it was Mont Ventoux, not what you're looking for when you've already ridden 200 kilometres through the shadeless scorch of Provence. And to make things worse, they'd be able to see it long before they got to it, because Ventoux dominates the Provence landscape in the same way that it haunts the riders' imaginations. From Tommy Simpson's death here 35 years ago to Eddie Merckx finishing the stage in an oxygen tent, the Ventoux is baked in history, and almost none of it is reassuring. For Lance Armstrong, though, the history of this place is more recent and more personal. In 2000, the stage to Mont Ventoux was a microcosm of the whole Tour. Italy's Marco Pantani continually attacking, Lance Armstrong matching his tempo, then upping it. As they approached the line together, Armstrong passed up the chance of an historic win at one of cycling's holy places and offered it to Pantani as a mark of respect to a great climber. Far from accepting gracefully, though, Pantani continued his attacks, this time in the media. And as relations between the two riders descended into war by press conference, Armstrong realised he'd given away an opportunity that may never come again. Today, of course, it has.
If I get there and in good position and I have an opportunity to win again, will I take it? Absolutely. Well, I mean, would I ever do what I did again? No, never.
Understandably, this of all stages is the one Armstrong wants to win. At the same time, though, this of all stages is impossible to guarantee.
It's not a climb or a mountain that you can be too cocky with. I mean, you have to respect that mountain because it's so difficult. In my opinion, it's the hardest climb in the Tour, maybe even the hardest climb in France. So for me to say I want revenge against the mountain or I want revenge against what happened in 2000 would be a mistake, because it's hard and you need to just basically survive it.
Well, that's what every stage to Mont Ventoux looks like, because the final climb is too tough to include any others along the way. So there's 200 kilometres of dread before everyone's worst fears are realised.
This is the lovely little town of Saint-Pierre-de-Vassol for the peloton, while the breakaway is in the town of Bédoin. And the riders at the back, they just want to get to the top and get to the top within the time limit if they can. Christophe Agneluto, 182. Former winner of the Tour of Switzerland and indeed a past stage winner in the Tour de France. But the riders are now in Bédoin. This is this beautiful town with its coffee shops where they've been sitting patiently drinking coffee, eating their croissant when we drove through, but not now. That's all left. The Tour de France, what they all came to see, has arrived.
Just at the back end of the main field, I caught a quick glimpse there of Brad McGee. McGee still recovering from that dramatic crash he had in the Pyrenees when he went off the road at 60 miles an hour. Unfortunately, he went off the road on the right side because he went against the cliff side. If he'd gone the other way, there was a drop of around about 600 metres. But since then, he really has been suffering to try and stay in contact with the main field. The Tour de France, Phil, is not the place to get injured and not the place to try and recover from an accident.
No, absolutely right, but we don't want you scaring mum and dad back home there in Sydney. Brad is doing just fine right now as he comes up towards the town of Bédoin. This is the breakaway. The men in it, Pradera of España. We'll give you each one of them name by name as they drop off the back, I'm afraid to say, as will happen very shortly. The German flag flying there, no doubt for ERIK Zabel. There's no top German likely to win this race in the absence of the great German rider Jan Ullrich.
Very nervous moment. There is Botero on the front there. You see how hot it is today. These guys are opening up their jerseys to the absolute maximum. They actually have a zipper down the front there which allows them to do this, and this is a design that's come around in the last few years because with all the incredible clothing that these riders have got, they really still do have a hard time finding something to keep you cool on these very hot, humid summer afternoons.
Well, they're certainly attacking with a little bit of gusto. This is Moreni on the front. He's a very nice Italian climber, not one of the greats, but he certainly is not going to be too afraid of the climb in that front group, under the 25 kilometers now. And we're about to receive the latest time check as they pass under with Rabobank on the front. 7 minutes 50 now at 25 kilometers to go. So it's already coming down. The race radio is still telling us 11 riders are in the lead, but they obviously didn't see one of them duck into the vineyards with his stomach problem, so he'll probably be riding along the road by himself at the moment. That was Anthony Morin.
There's Virenque in second position there. Bischoff in third position, fourth position in the green and white jersey. For the moment, Virenque looks very comfortable, but it's easy to look comfortable on this part of the Mont Ventoux. In a short moment, they'll get an indication that they're about 21 kilometers to go to the summit, and it's 21 kilometers of climbing. It is a very difficult climb, this, and to ask a man who has been a brilliant climber in the past to come out and find the energy to keep the tempo going after a break that has been 180 kilometers. These men really formed after just 12 miles of racing. They built up a big advantage of over 12.5 minutes, but since then it's slowly but steadily come down.
And the crowd's here offering water, the riders taking it gratefully, but pouring it largely over their heads. They don't like to drink water offered by anybody but their team management. We're looking down at Thor Hushovd on the left of our picture, just taking a drink off that travelling motorbike. This is Christian Moreni of Italy setting the pace. Virenque is just itching to get onto the steeper slopes here now of the climb. And it looks to me as though we've got a problem with Brad McGee in the peloton. He has been dropped by the main field, so Brad is just going to settle in for a long ride up the mountain today. Should be okay, but maybe sensibly so. Not trying to kill himself to hang on to the peloton, but just have his own ride up the hill. He's still suffering, as Paul has said, from the crash coming off the Col de Soulor a few days ago now in the Pyrenees. 20 kilometers to go for the leaders. Watch who's running again.
It's unbelievable. That's a horrendous thing to see. Even as an ex-bike rider, when you look at that sign and you see 20 kilometers to go, you just normally think about around about half an hour of pain and suffering. But 20 kilometers to go on a mountain is a long way.
We've just passed under that 20 kilometer to go banner in the distance there, which means that a kilometer earlier they will have seen the sign which says Mont Ventoux, King of the Mountains, 21 kilometers. Wow. It's a little bit of a steady start to the climb, which I said to Paul when we were driving up, I'd be behind already because it doesn't look very steep on the camera here. It is actually rather nasty, but it gradually gets steeper and steeper, making an average gradient of 7.5%, and it goes up to 1,912 meters on the finishing line, which if you're talking feet, that is 6,273 feet. A long way.
And the funny thing is, if the guys at the top don't put their brakes on, they plummet down the other side because the finish line is just perched on the top of this unbelievable mountain which sticks out of Provence like a pimple on the skyline. And right now, we in fact can look down from the commentary position to the long line of crowds that have come out, some of them for 2 or 3 days, to find a good place to watch this bike race.
Well, I thought for a moment there the peloton on the right had gone the wrong way, but it is a roundabout. And the policeman there indicating when he waves his yellow flag like that, you can take both sides as you'll come out in the same place, because it is not unknown if you go to the wrong side sometimes you turn right by accident because it's all barriered off and you're on your way off course. Back to the leaders here now, the 10 men who are surviving, and just wondering for the moment there'll be no vicious attack from these men. They're going to hold tempo as long as possible. But shortly we'll be out of the hot sunny bottom and the approach to Ventoux into the wooded line of trees where there is a massive crowd waiting, as if there wasn't now. And then the last couple of kilometers they break out on the moon.
really is a horrendous landscape over the summit here, and a little bit due to man's devastation of the landscape, really, because it was 400 years ago that the summit of this climb was deforested, and most of that wood was used for shipbuilding. And since then, it really became a question of erosion, and it's turned out into what really looks like a moonscape rather than a landscape. And when it gets hot up here, the sun reflects off the rock, pushing the temperature in excess of 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's been hotter, although it's a beautiful day today. I think the riders will appreciate that it's not as hot as it normally is on the Ventoux. Sadly, the year that Tom Simpson died, it was a boiling cauldron of heat in 1967. And when I came up it in the early 70s with a race, one of the riders, Dirk Bayert, a former world champion of the pursuit, just literally toppled off his bike with sunstroke and had to retire from the Tour. And that was before he got onto the steep section. Now, Moreni is opening up the battle. He's made the first move here. Not too sure that's a wise thing to do, Christian, but he's done it.
Well, right now he just wants to get onto the steeper part of the climb and ride at his own tempo. You see that slight acceleration has already popped somebody off the back there. It looks like the Jean de la Tour rider, Stéphane Auger, who's been dropped right now. You cannot discount this man either. Christophe Moreau is a very aggressive bike rider. He's ridden exceptionally well at the Giro d'Italia. In fact, has won himself a stage there, which he took last year, and worn the pink jersey of leadership. But right now, after a long day in the saddle, he's looking to reduce the numbers in this group, and for the moment, looking pretty good. Richard Virenque is in third place. Bocharov, the man I expected, is in there in second. And the other man who is a good climber, Baranovski, is in there in about fifth.
Just tagged on the back is the captain of Lampre, Serpellini. But the rest look as though they're not going to try and hold this space. The Jean de la Tour boys have stripped off the back. And Marco Velo has also gone for Fassa Bortolo. So they split rather early. But Jaja down there, Laurent Jalabert, the cheers for the great French champion in his last Tour. He surely can't do anything special again today. But now we're seeing 6 riders shaping up the race now. They've gone clear.
Well, the race is going to change pretty dramatically now over the next 10 kilometers. These guys have got to set as hard a tempo as possible, and it's a complete different pedaling action they're going to have to try and find, because for the first few hours of today they've been riding in massive gears, thundering along the flat stages at speeds of up to 45 kilometers an hour. And now they go to the complete other end of the cluster, Phil, because right now they're using the smallest gears that they've got as they go onto the early slopes of this climb. It's starting to get tough.
Well, I'll give you the names of the 6 leaders now. It is Mikel Pradera of the Once team, Richard Virenque, of course, of Domo, Darius Baranovski, Benesto, Marcos Serpellini of Lampre, Alexander Bocharov, AG2R, Christian Moreni, the man that caused the split, from Alessio. They've left the rest behind. There's 6 men now trying to hold on to a gap which is coming down, but not that quickly yet. 7 3/4 minutes they have. There's the names for you. As we look down, still Moreni leading the pace at the front.
Well, there you can see Richard Virenque in the grey jersey on the left-hand side. This is an unbelievable opportunity for Richard Virenque, who, as well as Laurent Jalabert, must be getting very close to the autumn of his career. And in fact, he's had a hard time trying to get back from being involved in that Festina affair a couple of years ago. 9 months of suspension he had to serve on that occasion. And ever since then, he's really been trying to ride and prove that he still can be a great rider. His win in Paris Tours last year was after an unbelievably long breakaway, but I'm not sure whether he's got the legs that he used to have in the mountains, because in the Pyrenees, Phil, he always seemed under difficulty on the climbs.
Yes, he certainly did. But let's hope he can see his way, as I'm sure he will, all the way to Paris. 7 minutes 13 for the leaders on the peloton. Stragglers in between now, so it still comes down. There's a long, long way to go. Best part of 19 kilometers still to ride. Our computer for the leaders say they have 17 kilometers. A large bottle on the left there, advertising the wines of the hill of Mont Ventoux, because the lower slopes here is a great sun trap and perfect conditions for growing the grape. As you can see, the vineyards down there. And we can see the yellow jersey standing out, reflecting off the parasols there of Lance Armstrong, being led now by US Postal. Everybody else has been forced into number 2 and number 3 seats. This team is probably, I think, one of the best teams we have ever seen in our career.
Absolutely superb. They're all well drilled. They've come this year to absolute perfection at the Tour de France as they go under the banner. They're indicating 20 kilometers to go. Georgi Hincapie, I think, has just pulled off a large man from US Postal. In fact, he hasn't. It must have been Pavel Podrinos, because Hincapie on the front there with those incredible sunglasses on is doing a brilliant ride for his team leader, Lance Armstrong. They were a good team last year, but the Spanish riders were never really as good as they have been this year. Both Rubiera and Heras had a very difficult time, but right now they are on absolutely superb form, and that is what's making this team so good. They've got men who are capable of helping Armstrong on the flat roads, but then once the roads tilt up to the skies, the Spanish climbers that they have in their midst are absolutely magnificent, and they're working for just one thing. That's to help Lance get to the finish with the yellow jersey on his shoulders.
Absolutely right, and we're now looking at the leaders who are trying to hold on to an advantage at 20 kilometers to go of 7 minutes and 10 seconds. Botcherov here takes yet another shower and a quick drink. The heat of Mont Ventoux now beginning to bite the leaders here, right on the nose as they start the ride into the wooded lower slopes. They are, in fact, 16.2 kilometers from the summit. The gap is now down to 7 minutes and 10 seconds at 20 kilometers to go. The 6 riders who have got themselves clear of the rest of the breakaway in the pink there: Mikel Pradera of Once, Richard Virenque of Domo, Darius Baranovsky of Banesto, Marcos Serpellini of Lampre, Alexander Botcherov of the AG2R, and the man that split them, Christian Mareni of Alessio, who has worn the pink jersey last year in the Tour, 2 years ago, in the Giro d'Italia for 3 days.
16.5 kilometers, Phil. That is 10 miles uphill. From the valley below, these men have got to look at the unbelievable sight which is up above them. This is Baranovsky right now. He's been a brilliant bike rider throughout his career, always promised to be good. Christian Moreni there is suffering. He's going out at the back of the group. This group will now be just a question of survival. The strongest men will try and stay together for as long as possible. Richard Virenque is in the middle there, happy to be in 3rd position. Botcherov is there in 2nd. Serpellini is doing a very nice ride, thank you very much, because he's the rider who I expected to be the worst of all the climbers, but he has actually been sitting at the back of the group for a long number of kilometers, not contributing at all to the pacemaking.
Well, he's hanging on, of course, in defense of Raimundus Rumsas back in the peloton, and the peloton has now split. I'm sure we'll get pictures shortly, but the peloton, as we would expect, has split. Erik Zabel from Germany has gone off the back, but alongside him and going off with him is Laurent Jalabert. So Jalabert has been dropped by the peloton. Clearly now wants just to get to the top today and try and have a rest tomorrow because of the last 2 days of the mountains to come later in the week.
Well, that group of 140 riders you mentioned a few moments ago in the main field, Race Radio Phil, are now telling us that that is down to just 40 men strong. And there are still a lot of blue jerseys at the front of that group from the US Postal Service, and Armstrong riding in around about 4th or 5th position. But here is where the action is for the leaders. Baranovsky is on the front there, and it's slowly but surely coming down. These men at one stage on the road today led the race by 12.5 minutes. Right now it's inside of 7 minutes, and they're losing time with every pedal stroke at the moment. But the question is there one man in there with enough power left in his legs to survive? I'm beginning to think that maybe there isn't.
Well, I don't know. Baranovsky himself, one of the few Polish riders in the race, is a fabulous climber, and is now trying to keep this race clear. They are down to just over 6 minutes the gap, as we now look at the chaos being caused here as riders sit up and wait. Now the team car on the left is checking out the riders of his team who've been left. They're giving them water and drinks, and then they're saying, we're off now to stay with the leaders, get home as best you can. And you can see in this group a number of riders from Once, and also 1 or 2 other climbers. We've got Beloficic is the Lampre rider, 2 up on the left. Also off the back, I think probably Jalabert is in this group as well. The team car is now being allowed to move forward to the front half of the peloton, which, as Paul has said, has been reduced now dramatically to 40 riders. Miguel Martinez, I think it was, scooting up the outside there.
Quite amazing, the movements of Laurent Jalabert in the main field, because just a couple of days ago he was 34th overall. He climbed up to 9th yesterday, and by the end of today he'll probably plummet back down to 30th again. There is Jalabert there, about 4 or 5 riders from the back, but I think today really using his experience much more than anything else. He knows he can't finish in the top 5 of this year's Tour de France, and today he's just trying to conserve some energy because he still needs to fight well to try and conserve the lead in the King of the Mountains competition. The red number on his back there, number 51, indicating that he's been the most aggressive bike rider in the Tour de France so far. And it was nice to read in the newspapers this morning that Miguel Martinez, who is riding alongside him today, Phil, said that he felt such an honor to be riding alongside a man that he spent most of his young career just reading about.
Yes, that is always nice. A young man coming through. He's in this breakaway and this back group as well, as we now rejoin the men who are causing the pain down there. This is Lance Armstrong using his team. Floyd Landis up here as well. This is going to be a hard ride for somebody up here. I believe Armstrong deeply wants to win this stage, and he's got to pull back just over 6 minutes. And they're telling us at the moment 6 minutes 20 seconds now is the gap as George Hincapie leads the train, and it's closing down all of the time.
Well, Floyd Landis really has learned an awful lot. It's a question of going from nursery school, missing out secondary school and going straight to university when you come here to the Tour de France. That's where the men of the Tour de France have to go this afternoon. And Floyd Landis really now riding with the top team in the world. US Postal Service have done a brilliant job for Lance Armstrong over the last 14 days of this year's Tour de France, and Floyd Landis really has had to learn very quickly. He learned quickly in the Dauphiné Libéré, where he almost took the lead away from Lance Armstrong, and he finished in that race in 2nd place overall. And most of the Dauphiné Libéré was over similar roads to the roads that the Tour will be going over for the next week.
14.5 kilometers to go. Baranowski is doing the ride of his life here. He's been a high finisher before. He's had good times in the Tour. He's finished in the 30th place. He's a good climber. He once was a member of US Postal's team. Now he rides for the Spanish iBenesto.com outfit. And surprisingly, Paul, Virenque has not made an early move. To me, that indicates he's not going as well as he normally does.
I think he's just happy to be in the group right now. He's got his jersey completely ripped open there, trying to keep himself as cool as possible. He will just try and stay, I think, with the tempo of the 2 men on the front, the men I expected to be the strongest in the group, Baranovsky and Bocharov. And right now you can see the yellow jersey group is picking up the pacemaking. Look at this. This is a face we better learn to know over the next few years, because he may well be the next American star. Floyd Landis on the front here doing a brilliant job right now, and we're getting information over the radio that the big man of the flatlands, George Hincapie, is going off the back of the group. Now that's not really a surprise.
No, it's not, but he's played his part. Minutes ago we saw him giving it the last full effort at the front, and then it was straight through the group and sailing off the back. He's gone now, and although that looked to me like it might have been him climbing back through the bunch, but we'll see as we look down. Other riders who've gone off, Christophe Moreau has just gone off, the leader of Crédit Agricole. Once tipped as a man for a top 3 finish, but has had a thoroughly forgettable tour in the opening week. And, well, he said he was getting better and better in the mountains, but things seem to have changed again today. These are the leaders. And now a change of pacemaker. Alongside Baranowski comes Alexander Bocharov. Richard Virenque in the middle. The pink there is Marcos Serrano. And Fredera just shot off to the right. We're not sure what he was doing.
I think he put the handbrake on there because the pace was just getting a little bit too much for him. He just could not follow the pace that was being set by the 2 climbers in this group, Baranovsky and Bocharov. And this is at the back of the main peloton as well, because Jörg Jach is going off the tail end of the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong. And this is also Dario Frigo. He too hasn't been able to stay with the pace of this unbelievable slope of the Mont Ventoux. It's really going to make a difference today.
Well, sometimes the mountains of Italy are not the same as the mountains of the Tour de France. This is Dario Frigo, who is being dropped now from what is left of the peloton of this year's Tour de France. And they are coming off one by one now. This looks as though it might be Andy Fleekinger. It is the French rider with the German-sounding name on the AG2R team. Christophe Moreau has just slipped off the back, so too George Hincapie. And in fact, as we speak of George, here is George Hincapie going through the back.
This is an acceleration now coming from Alexander Botero. He's a very good climber, finished well in the Tour de France last year, and now the response is coming from Richard Virenque, and the crowd will get behind Richard Virenque. They love him in this part of France. He's a local rider. He's slowly but surely coming back here, and it looks as if the man who had the difficulty in the team time trial, Mikel Pradera, has recovered somewhat, and he's coming back up to rejoin that attack. But that attack has caught out Baranovski, who is going out to the back of the group now. But still, the Lampre rider, Serpellini's in contact. He's doing a brilliant ride.
He certainly is. Alexander Botero, the Russian here, second overall in the Tour Down Under in Australia this year in January, and he's still kept his great form to ride here in the Tour de France. Well, his little attack has caused a ripple of pain, but 4 riders are still together. We've lost Darius Baranovski at the moment, and so he is the one that paid for his pacemaking as Botero now sets the pace. 4 riders trying to go clear. They know that the field is coming. How many times, Paul, have we commentated on a breakaway when Lance Armstrong has been whipping up the chase behind and before the summit has appeared at the front?
Well, it's been every mountain stage so far, and I have a feeling today he may well be looking for the victory too, because he still, I think, is stinging from that victory of Marco Pantani in the year 2000 at the summit here. He thought on that occasion he was doing the right thing, because Pantani had been dropped and caught Armstrong back on so many occasions, and Armstrong felt that he was the strongest man on the day, so he thinks that he allowed him to win on that occasion. But ever since then, it's really been a little pinprick in the back of his mind, saying when you come to the big occasions of the Tour, you have to take them for yourself.
Well, this is Christophe Moreau, who's now lost hope and is slowly making the climb at his own speed. Let's have a look where we're going now. We're at the back of the race here, as these riders indicate to us just how hard it is to climb Mont Ventoux. They've tried to keep up with the leaders. This is Emmanuel Magnon. He was dropped with Christophe Moreau. Moreau is just behind him, asking the crowd for water. Looks like it might be Thomas Konechny there. Unless you're back at the front here. Sorry, this is a very tired-looking Richard Virenque having a good look there at Mikel Pradera. I'm wondering what he's trying to do next. But Virenque is not climbing like the man of a couple of years ago when he was 5 times king of the mountains.
They're now getting to the steeper part of this climb. The climb is quite horrendous in the middle part. Botero had tried to accelerate a few moments ago. He's in the dark blue jersey. But they come to a point in this climb where if you really don't have any more energy left in those legs of yours, you have to almost zigzag across the road. And in fact, this is starting to bring back some nasty memories to me, Phil, because I actually raced Pyrenees on this race, on this climb, this side of the climb, many years ago, and the finish was only halfway up at the Chalet Renard. And I remember I got to this portion of the climb here, and I really didn't think I could get to the top. I did get to the top, but unfortunately outside the elimination time.
And how mean were the race referees that day? He was 100 metres behind a rider who wasn't outside the elimination time. Now we're still looking at this incredible acceleration by US Postal. They just lift the tempo and see who is left. And again, they've cracked somebody else now. Was it Landis?
Landis, he did his job. A great ride by this young man. First attempt at the Tour de France, and he is off the back. So too, you can see going out there is Patrice Algon. And in the front of him there, 204, is Laurent Brochard, the man who so dearly wants to try and win the stage yesterday. But these men are coming off the back of the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong, one at a time. Santiago Botero is still in there, so is González de Galdeano and Joseba Beloki. So all of Armstrong's big challengers, Phil, are still in contact with him. There's still an awful long way to go to the summit here of the Mont Ventoux.
Armstrong looking very, very cool, but I'm looking around to see where the rest of his team are now. It looks like we're down to one man. Roberto Heras will be in the pack somewhere because he always just holds off until he's called up. And he's so small you can't catch sight of him. But Botero is still there, Rumsas is still here. This is a very interesting climbing on the outside there. I think is Ivan Basso, the white jerseyed leader. Now we're looking at the 4 men who are still surviving at the front. We're getting a time check of 5 minutes 50. 5 minutes 50 as we speak. They're just shouting us the names of that chase group of Armstrong, so I'll get Paul to write those down because we'll see who is missing now from that group. And there's another acceleration here, and this is coming, I think, from the front of the Armstrong group. Now this is most interesting. This is a tempter. Now this is the first time we've seen anybody attack Lance and his pacemakers, and Lance might be stripped a little bit of his big team here now. They've worked very, very hard to keep this race together, and now Oncé are starting to play a card. Perhaps they're beginning to fight back to see if the Maillot Jaune of the Tour can go 3 mountain climbs in a day, or in 3 days, and actually come out fighting. It could be Jose Acevedo, this rider from Oncé, is breaking clear. We've gone back up to the front here, as it looks as though Pradera has cracked, Serpellini has cracked. So we now just have VIRENQUE up front with Botcherov. The only 2 survivors at the head of the race from the original 11th. And this is what this is a flashback as to how it happened. You can see that Serpellini was already going. And then Pradera just said, wow, I just can't keep this up anymore. And he's cracked big time.
This is a horrendous part of the climb. So this is where it really kicks off. Botcherov is doing a very good job of setting his own personal tempo, and VIRENQUE is looking for all kinds of courage just to try and stay in contact, because he knows if he can just stay in contact with this man, if they do survive, he's got a very good chance of taking what for him will be a magnificent victory, especially in the twilight of his career. But all of the big names are basically in that group of Lance Armstrongs, and Roberto Heras' name was given out over race radio, so maybe once again they're keeping Roberto Heras in reserve for later on in the afternoon. All of the big leaders for Oncé were there as well. Beloki, Igor González de Galdeano, Marcos Serrano. So Oncé once again in force, and this is the thing that Lance Armstrong has said since the very start of the Tour de France. He is worried about the Oncé block. And today, let's not forget, Oncé have been basically sitting in the shadows, waiting for the moment to launch their attack. But it looks as if Igor González de Galdeano has almost, as we speak, disappeared from the group.
Well, it's certainly Acevedo who's playing the card, but he might well have cracked his own former team leader here, because he is dropping back, as too is David Miller. Well, this is David Miller now in trouble in the convoy. No time to reflect on his brilliant victory yesterday, paying the price now, I suspect, for the long breakaway. We're looking now at Rubiera here, one of only 2 teammates left alongside Lance Armstrong. The other one, Roberto Heras, in that very select group, is tucked in just on the back of it. And there are other riders here they will worry about. Joseba Beloki is still here, but moments ago, Igor González de Galdeano uncoupled from the train and is going down the hill backwards.
Well, he's losing his 3rd place in the overall standings if he can't stay in contact with this group, because Rumzas 4th and Botero 5th are in the group at the moment with Ivan Basso, and Roberto Heras is still there too. So there's a change at the top of the leaderboard.
The capture of Acevedo, he went away. All he did was destroy Igor González de Galdeano, his teammate, because the group has brought him back. Rubiera is the man to ride now for Armstrong on the front, a relentless place, and crouched low over the bike at the back is Santiago Botero, looking, Paul, he's not going to be there much longer.
Well, there you can see Bobby Julich. He was in the breakaway yesterday. He too is having a difficult time getting over the summit of this climb right now. He's trying to just get up to the top of this mountain at his very own personal pace, but he won't stay in contact with the leaders this afternoon. And as we go back up to the 2 leaders on the road, we get a time check coming through for Richard VIRENQUE, number 71, and Botcherov, number 181. It's just outside of 5 minutes right now, Phil. And if you look at the speed that these men are going, it's visually different to the speed of Lance Armstrong and the pace being set by Chechu Rubiera.
30 seconds a kilometre. That's what it means. They've got to pull back on these 2 now if they are going to win. If you are experiencing bad pictures, so we are too. It is all to do with the atmospherics of Ventoux. We will get you them back as quickly as possible. As we look at the 2 leaders here, VIRENQUE and Botcherov, you get some idea of the angle of the climb from our camera. There's an acceleration here from Richard. I'm not sure whether that was an attack. We'll find out very soon. This is Michael Bogart, who is now going off the back. He too was in the breakaway yesterday, as our cameras quickly come up on Thomas Konechny. He too slipping away down the cars. I don't think there's any peloton now. Riders have tried their best to hang on, and they have cracked big time. And just look at this one now. This is Unai Osa, a very good climber, and never really been in this Tour de France this time around. As we also see Axel Merckx losing ground as well. Axel Merckx in trouble himself now on the slopes of Mont Ventoux. The leaders have 11 kilometers still to climb. Everybody is committed. Merckx hung on well for a while, but this group here just ahead of him, containing Sylvain Chavanel, one of the big white hopes of the Tour de France and for France for the future, but he's learning the difficult side of the Tour right now. 5 minutes and 3 seconds. That's Armstrong to Virenque, and Virenque's gone.
Well, Virenque's launched the attack. He came up a couple of times alongside Botero to see just whether or not he had it in his legs right now. And Virenque looking for the challenge that brought him the title of best climber in the Tour de France on 5 occasions, and right now he's opened up just a small advantage. This is a scurry really to test and see whether Botero has got anything at all left in his legs. These two riders are 5 minutes ahead of the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong, and when we looked back at the Armstrong group a few moments ago, Phil, I wasn't sure whether or not Levi Leipheimer was there. His teammates have done everything possible to keep him in contact, but I think he too was having a hard time with the accelerations being set on the front by Jose Luis Ribiera.
Well, Richard Virenque, this was his plan for the day, to get an early move, get some time, and then race for the finish like a rabbit. And he's got him onto the climb with a lead of just over 7.5 minutes. Now, with that gap at 5 minutes and 10 seconds, he's about 10.5 kilometers from the summit. He's left himself a chance.
He has a chance. He's a climber. Once you've been a climber, you always have that ability in your legs to stay clear off the front of the main field. He now will try and find as much courage as possible. He's looking over his shoulder to see if he has opened the gap between himself and Alexander Bocharov. And as we pull back there, you can see that he has slowly but surely started to increase the distance between him and the Russian. There is the Russian right now, and the Russian takes on board a drink. A little professional acceleration there for the Russian, but that's not going to help him too much in the picture, the long picture of this whole climb up to the summit of Mont Ventoux.
He's already 1 minute behind Richard Virenque. It is amazing how fast you lose time when the elastic snaps, Paul. 1 minute back to that man.
When you go on the slopes of a mountain like this. Virenque now is looking for all of his courage to try and get himself to the summit of the climb. But there is the group of the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong. And looking down on the group, we can see Armstrong, Beloki is in there, Acevedo is there, Rumsas is on the left-hand side. The white jersey there is Ivan Basso, Santiago Botero is there as well. Francisco Mancebo is also there for Ibanesto.com. So all of the American challenges for Lance Armstrong have disappeared today, again on the slopes of the mountains. And again, another acceleration coming from Acevedo, trying to put pressure on Armstrong. But look at the ease that Armstrong came across as they go past Thor Hushovd.
Well, this is the second time he stretched the team. He lost Igor González de Galdeano in the first attack. At least Beloki has hung on. I think Beloki is actually riding very, very well indeed here. He's just going to follow Lance Armstrong, but he's got to go for him sooner or later if he wants to. And no longer on the back after that acceleration is the Colombian. So Botero has gone.
Well, that